So as many of you guys know, over the past couple months, James Charles has been accused of very serious stuff. And because of that, a lot of YouTubers have been calling for sponsors to drop James Charles. In particular, Morphe. So after a couple weeks of people continuously asking them, Morphe came out with a statement on the situation. They tweeted out, "In light of the recent allegations against James Charles, Morphe and James have agreed to end our business relationship and wind down sales of the Morphe x James Charles product offering. It is and always has been Morphe's goal to create a positive, safe, and empowering space where all beauty lovers can freely share their artistry and passion for cosmetics. And Morphe is committed to furthering that goal." Ray responds to Morphe by saying, "Honestly, it's really encouraging to see him have to face some sort of serious repercussions after getting away with everything for so long. Thank you, Morphe. Now could you cut off Nikita Blackfish too?" Sproutchin says, "Wind down is an interesting choice of words. For slowly ending a business relationship with someone who admitted to sending naked pictures to minors during Sexual Assault Prevention Month." Kyla says, "Caught on, haven't you? Took long enough." Mike Nactor responds to Morphe by saying, "Thank you for maintaining the standard you set. Although, I could have done without hearing about how James has also agreed to parting ways. I have no interest in what an established child predator has agreed to." Andy E.G. responds to him by saying, "I fixed it for them," showing a parody of the Morphe statement that says, "In light of the recent admitted crimes of James Charles, Morphe and James have agreed to end our business relationship, but still sell the remaining stock for profit of the Morphe x James Charles product offering. It is and has always been Morphe's goal to hope it would go away, where all beauty lovers can freely share their artistry and passion for cosmetics, and Morphe is pissed off you wouldn't shut up about it." Kylie Beauty responds to Morphe by saying, "So y'all are going to wait 3 weeks and announce this at 9 PM EST on a Friday night, where nobody will see? Ah yes, makes sense. Morphe is still trash, and the only reason they dropped him was because more victims came out after his video. If it hadn't gone worse, they wouldn't do. Poo." Boo responds to Morphe by saying, "Morphe and James have agreed. Didn't know that a child predator was able to agree to end their business relationship." Yes Chachin responds, "Probably because of a contract." To which M. Romero replies, "Yes, but they had a contract with Jeffree, Shane, and Laura Lee, and yet they dropped them within a week of their scandal. Not weeks." 1975 Jin's responds to Morphe by saying, "Hi Morphe, they aren't allegations if he admitted to doing them." Rainy Day responds, "Legally, I think they are allegations until he is committed of the crime." Sean Vari responds, "He confessed." Pushing the idea that they are just allegations is completely disrespectful to the victims, and quite frankly to anyone who has experienced trauma. Please side with the victims. Chris Kilman's quote tweets Morphe and says, "Good, your move YouTube and Susan Wojcicki." James Charles then decides to address his breakup with Morphe when he tweets out, "Accountability is something I have spoken about a number of times in the past. In my most recent video, I spoke about and took accountability for my part in conversations I had with a few individuals who told me they were over the age of 18. As I said in that video, I can't show change overnight, but will over time. Since posting that video, many other people have come forward with a series of misleading stories and false allegations, which have been reported on by many people, creators, and news outlets. My legal team has begun taking action against those that have spread misinformation and or created completely fake stories, as this has gone too far. These stories have caused many of my long-term partners to receive considerable negative feedback, one of them being Morphe. I've loved every moment working together and am beyond grateful for what we've created together. That being said, I reached out to them and we mutually agreed to wind down on our James Charles x Morphe collaboration, which is my only project with them. I am continuing to take time away to learn, grow, and listen, and look forward to coming back one day in the future as a better version of myself. James." As for the misinformation being spread against James Charles, there's just been too many fake stories for me to explain in this one video, so if you want to learn about them after watching this video, I recommend checking out a video titled, "This Video Will Make You Hate Deaf Noodles," him being one of the major culprits of this spread of misinformation. Everything's explained in that video, plus more, so if you want to check it out, I will leave the link in the description below. But moving on, a lot of people responded to James Charles, one of those people being Onision, who said, "James, you got caught trying to hit up people who were not legal. Taking accountability doesn't involve making excuses and blaming people who are still not able to legally consent." Nit responds to James by saying, "Y'all are so annoying on social media. Leave James alone. You don't need to ruin people's livelihood just for your 10 minutes of fame." Tia responds, "You're sick for defending a predator, and anyone else who defends him is sick. This isn't the first time he's been caught being involved with minors. There's no excuse for his behavior. It's disgusting." G responds to James by saying, "This tweet itself shows that there has been no growth. While I do believe there are false allegations, we do know there are ones James admitted himself are true. I truly hope Morphe is discontinuing their work with James not because of false allegations, but because of the true ones." Abe responds, all this. He is quick to point out supposed false allegations, while staying completely silent on the ones with merit. Quick to point fingers and specifics on what makes him look better, but doesn't touch on or get into any specifics of accountability on his wrongdoings. Christian responds with a picture of James holding up a sign saying, "Unleash your inner lawsuit." Midab responds to James by saying, "People keep saying, how is it James' fault? James is a 21-year-old adult. He is the mature one in these situations. Plus, why is he only talking to boys that look borderline 18, borderline 14? Like he is incapable of talking to actual adults whose age he wouldn't have to question?" The Blazed Goddess replies, "He is 21, so he's supposed to automatically be attracted to older-looking men because he's a legal adult? I get he did something wrong, but they also did something wrong by lying about their age to begin with. That's how all of it even started." Truth Sleuth says, "Is it me, or does anyone find it suspicious that Morphe and James Charles only posted their statements on Twitter, which is both of their smallest platforms, instead of their bigger/biggest ones? I smell insincerity." Lily Marston responds to James by saying, "While it sucks that people make things up, quick lesson in accountability, James. It doesn't quite work to try and blame the negative feedback on just the false allegations, when you literally already admitted to the very crimes they accuse you of. Frequency didn't lose your brand deal. The illegal behavior that you admitted to partaking in on multiple occasions did." Chris Kilman's response to James by saying, "These stories have caused many of my long-term partners to receive considerable negative feedback. Stop talking about accountability when you still fail to realize it wasn't some stories being possibly fake, but instead your actions that caused the negative feedback. Laughing my fucking ass off, the fuck?" Parker May responds to James by saying, "James Charles sexted multiple children, some of which he admits to. Now he puts out a public statement saying that his lawyers are going after victims who he claims have spread misinformation. This is blatant fear-mongering to make his victims afraid to share their stories." Luke responds to James by saying, "Let's make one thing clear. If James Charles wasn't a rich celebrity, he would have been jailed already." Larna Lynn Pro responds to James by saying, "The problem is, James, you are a fucking brand. The last place you should have ever looked for love is social media. And what makes it worse is you should know how to look for these boys' ages, because the internet is your living." Augie RC responds to James by saying, "Grease them cheeks, Def Noodles." Nicholas Diorio comments on all of this by saying, "I'm glad James came to a mutual agreement with his sponsor so he could make that passive-aggressive tweet and shove it up the T community's ass. The James Charles situation is actually fascinating. As I continue to play the long game, I can't help but notice we are nearly 2 months in, and not a single one of these kids have showed substantial proof James knew their age. I'm seeing a lot of, some of the kids could have been like contacting the police and don't want to tweet their evidence. No shit, my dude, lol. There could be 999,999 other accusers who only contacted the police. That's why it's called the long game." Tommy C comments on all of this in a Twitter video titled, "A comment on James Charles' lawsuit threats."
I do want to get these comments out based on the potential lawsuits of James Charles. And there's a lot of talk I've seen, I made a joke about it myself, about potential defamation lawsuits towards one Def Noodles and Ethan Klein. At least initially, I don't believe you're going to see them getting sued. I don't. I think what's more than likely is the so-called victims that jumped on, that they can prove fabricated the story. One individual who recently admitted fabricating the story, they're the ones that are going to be in the hot seat, at very least at first. So don't get all jumpy and don't get mad at me when you hear this information. More than likely, Ethan Klein and Def Noodles will not be the target of lawsuits in the future. And I'm seeing a lot of stuff saying it's a guarantee or no. It's a possibility. Now, let's say I'm wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, because I like to see it hurt a little. I got more bad news for you. The bar to defame or slander a public figure, and both of them are, nice big blue check marks, that could be used in court to identify them as a public figure, is very high. Doesn't mean they can't sue them. It doesn't mean they can't win, but it's very, very high, and they have to show material damage, from what I understand. So James Charles is going to have to prove that Ethan Klein and Def Noodles' words led directly to financial loss, things like sponsorship, even sub loss and potential revenue. If his revenue's up and his sub loss is there, it probably won't work. But that's also why I believe that the initial lawsuits, if James is telling the truth and not blowing smoke, will not be against Ethan Klein and Def Noodles. If they are, even worse, James will probably lose. But it'll sting a little because they're going to have to go to court. Court costs money. Unless, of course, it's an anti-slap.
Speaking of Ethan Klein, he also responds to James Charles by simply saying jail, and then follows it up by saying, last I counted, there were 17 total accusations, 10 of which are minors. 2 James have confessed to. Tell me which ones are lying, James Charles. Amray responds to H3 by saying, it's so pathetic how he tries to paint this all as some boys who told me they were over 18. Like, no, James. This is all about you sending explicit messages to kids without doing the bare minimum to confirm they are of age. Kat responds to H3 by saying, listening and learning while my legal team takes action against you. Cat 10 Birds tweets out, of course Morphe and James Charles wait to release paragraphs of statements until 9 p.m. Eastern on Friday. Grace Panetta responds, accountability is something, it sure is. Nick Schneider tweets out, I'd like to remind James Charles it's not the fake stories that got you where you are currently. It's the real stories, including the ones you admitted to on video. Your statement was nothing more than an attempt at painting yourself once again as the victim. The Sorikal says, so James' apology included intimidation, no accountability, and crying about his collaborations being in jeopardy. James is not hurting for money at all, and it tells you exactly what kind of person he is by his language and his apology. This motherfucker feels inconvenienced. T-Spill says, is James saying fake stories have made Morphe step down from working with him, and not the very real story he admitted to on camera? The statement was clearly written with anger. James speaks as if he's scolding his audience for speaking up about this. Centering his statement around the few fake stories was calculated so it seems like he's the victim for being dropped. And that's about it for the opinions on James Charles being dropped from Morphe. Obviously, this is a very ongoing situation. I mean, we're already on part 4, so if you don't want to miss part 5, be sure to subscribe with notifications on. Thank you so much to my channel members for supporting the channel, in particular Scrubby, who has donated $100 a month. But with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in another video.